In the early 2020s, a small, mysterious website appeared on the internet, a game that looked and felt like Roblox, but wasn't. It was called Mopaiv, a sandbox platform where players could build, explore, and form communities. But what started as a simple clone quickly turned into something much bigger, a place filled with rival factions, power struggles, and what players would later call wars. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished. This is the story of Mopaiv. Part 1. What was Mopaiv? Mopaiv was an unofficial Roblox-style platform. Players could create avatars, join open worlds, build structures, interact with others in real time. It wasn't backed by a big company, no corporate funding, no official moderation team like Roblox. Just a small project, likely run by a handful of developers. But that didn't stop it from building a community. And like many sandbox games, the players created their own stories. Part 2. The Rise of Factions. As more players joined Mopaiv, groups began to form. Not official ones, but player-made factions. The most well-known? The US Army of Mopaiv, a structured group that acted like a military faction inside the game. Players joined, organized, and fought together. But they weren't alone. Another faction began to rise, inspired by games like Brick Hill. This group, reportedly led by a player known as Lrocks, would become one of the most important forces in Mopaiv's history. Part 3. The First War. Tensions grew between the US Army of Mopaiv and the group led by Lrocks. There were no official battle systems, no declared wars by the game itself, but players made it real. They would join the same servers, group up, fight for control, raid each other's sessions. This became what the community remembers as the First Mopaiv War, a player-driven conflict, organized chaos, and for many players, it was the peak of the game. Part 4. Power Shift and Betrayal. After the First War, something changed. According to player accounts, Lrocks gained control or influence over the US Army of Mopaiv, and that's when things got worse. The community began to split. Some players followed Lrocks, others didn't trust him. That's when another name entered the story. Part 5. The Second War, Lrocks versus Telamon. A player known as Telamon emerged as a rival leader. Now, the conflict wasn't just between factions, it was personal. Lrocks versus Telamon. Players picked sides. Servers became battlegrounds again. What started as a game turned into a full community divide. This became known as the Second Mopaiv War. Not just a fight for control of servers, but a fight for control of the community itself. Part 6. Chaos behind the scenes. While players were fighting in-game, things weren't stable behind the scenes. Reports from the community suggest admin instability, toxic player behavior, possible abuse of power, Discord servers being wiped or raided. There was no strong moderation, no structure, and no way to keep everything under control. Mopaiv wasn't built to handle this level of chaos. Part 7. The Fall of Mopaiv. And then, it ended. No big announcement, no official shutdown message. The site simply went offline. The domain remained, but the game was gone. The community disappeared, and everything that happened inside it, the wars, the players, the stories, was left behind. Part 8. What remains today? Today, Mopaiv exists only in fragments. Old YouTube videos, small gameplay clips, player memories. Names like Lrocks, Telamon, US Army of Mopaiv still live on, but only through those who remember. Mopaiv wasn't a big game. It didn't have millions of players, but for the people who were there, it was real. A world they built, a war they fought, and a community that vanished without a trace. Sometimes the internet's most interesting stories are the ones that were never meant to last.